A white officer hesitates when he pulls over a black woman's car in the dead of night. He smirks, assuming she's nobody of significance. Little does he know, she once held the power to decide his fate. Alicia Carter steps through the exit doors, black evening dress sweeping just above her ankles. At 57, she's spent the night among judges and attorneys at Redwood County's judicial gala. A polite round of applause followed her modest acceptance speech, though she never yearned for the spotlight. Now, the parking lot lies nearly deserted. She slides into her sedan, tossing a pair of heels onto the back seat. Her posture remains poised despite the long night, and a weary sigh escapes her lips. The engine hums to life with a turn of the key. Nearly midnight. She's ready for an uneventful drive home. Minutes later, she cruises along a dimly lit stretch of road where street lamps are sparse. Redwood County seldom bustles at this hour, which is precisely why the sudden glare of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror startles her. She frowns, checking her speedometer. No speeding, no erratic movement. Still, the cruiser behind flashes for her to pull over. Easing onto the shoulder, Alicia keeps her hands on the wheel, recalling basic caution. A hush blankets the night until slow, heavy footsteps approach. She lowers her window, bracing for a routine check. But the officer's demeanor feels off. He leans in, flashlight aimed at her face, a tall, broad-shouldered figure with crisp uniform creases. The name tag reads O'Neill. There's no greeting, only a tone edged with mild condescension. "Out kinda late, aren't you?" he says, voice carrying a hint of mockery. Alicia meets his gaze calmly. "Is there a problem, officer?" He doesn't answer right away. "License and registration." He gestures vaguely, as though this is an inconvenience more than protocol. Alicia nods, carefully retrieving her wallet. His eyes flick over the back seat, noticing a pair of discarded heels and a small tote bag. "Big night," Officer O'Neill muses. Redwood doesn't see too many formal events. She offers the license with a steady hand. "I was attending a gathering downtown." He glances at the card, but doesn't comment on her name. "Mind stepping out?" The request is abrupt. His tone suggests he isn't asking. Alicia exhales softly. "May I ask what this is about?" O'Neill raps a knuckle on the roof. "Better to talk outside. You look out of place." His gaze lingers on her attire, as though it's evidence of wrongdoing. She unclips her seatbelt, opening the door with deliberate caution. Her dress shimmers under a passing headlight, but she ignores any self-conscious pang. Stepping onto the roadside, Alicia wonders why a single woman in a black sedan would warrant such suspicion. A single question forms in Alicia's mind, yet she keeps her composure. The officer's demeanor suggests he's looking for any reason to escalate. Redwood County rarely witnesses roadside confrontations at this hour, especially on a lonely back road. A passing car slows, its driver glancing curiously at the scene, but then continues on without stopping. O'Neill studies Alicia's license as though waiting for her to slip. She notes his deliberate pause, the hint of a smirk clinging to his face. He flicks his flashlight toward the sedan's rear plate. Squinting, he seems to linger on each digit, though it's unclear why. Maybe he's recalling something, or maybe it's just a ploy to unsettle her. She stands near her open door, dress shimmering under a stray beam of moonlight. There's a subdued elegance in her stance, contrasting sharply with the suspicion radiating from him. When he finally speaks again, his tone is edged with dry sarcasm. "Late-night drives in Redwood wearing that. Not the usual sight." Alicia's voice remains steady. "Is there a rule about what a person can wear after sundown?" He snorts. "I'm sure you know all about rules." Silence follows, broken only by the soft hum of her idling engine. She can almost sense his hesitation, as though he's testing her reaction before revealing his next move. But Alicia doesn't flinch, nor does she volunteer more information. She merely lifts her chin, waiting. He clears his throat, then reaches for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer O'Neill. Possible suspicious occupant. Requesting additional unit." His announcement crackles in the still air. Alicia tenses, but says nothing. The last thing she wants is to give him grounds to claim she's resisting. "What makes me suspicious, officer?" she asks calmly. He doesn't answer, instead eyeing her license once more. The hush feels oddly ominous, as though Redwood County itself is holding its breath. With a clipped gesture, he pockets the radio. "Let's just say you match a certain profile." He doesn't elaborate. She exhales, mind racing, yet outwardly projecting only cool resolve. Another vehicle's headlights appear in the distance, drifting closer. Alicia catches a glimpse of them through the side mirror. Two beams creeping along, likely curious, or possibly the backup O'Neill demanded. She wonders how far he intends to push this, how far she must endure before revealing her identity. He taps the license against his palm, eyeing her plate again. "One more question," he mutters into the radio, voice low. She arches a brow at him, unsettled by his persistence. He glances her way, then speaks softly into the mic. "I suspect we'll need that extra set of eyes." Alicia narrows hers. "One woman driving home and you need extra help." O'Neill lowers Alicia's license and levels a derisive stare at her sedan. "You know," he begins, "around here, not everyone fits a fancy car like that." His tone shifts from obligatory politeness to something sharper, a trace of contempt that she instantly recognizes. She keeps her gaze steady. "Is that so?" she asks, voice calm. "Am I breaking any law by driving it?" He scoffs, gesturing toward the driver's door. "Step out, I'd like a word." Alicia exhales slowly. This isn't her first encounter with a difficult officer, but it's the first time she's had to stand firm while hiding who she really is. She opens the door, stepping out into the dim glow of a distant street lamp. At this hour, Redwood County feels empty. Its few onlookers scattered behind drawn curtains or peering from half-lit porches. He squares his shoulders. "If you've got nothing to hide, you won't mind standing right here." The undercurrent of suspicion in his voice is unmistakable. She notices his hand hover near his belt, not quite gripping his holster, but not far from it either. "And if I refuse?" she asks, though her tone remains measured. He lets out a short laugh. "Refuse all you want, but I'm within my rights to investigate. You look a bit too successful to be cruising these streets at midnight. Sometimes, that money isn't clean." Alicia meets his insinuation with a quiet sigh, refusing to let him rattle her. "I'd prefer you tell me what I'm actually suspected of," she says, folding her hands in front of her. "Surely there must be a reason." He shifts his weight. "Reason enough," he mutters. "Don't worry, we'll get to that." A moment later, she sees movement. Two individuals a few houses down have stepped onto a porch. One raises a phone, possibly recording. Alicia wonders if that footage might become important. Yet she shows no outward reaction. She won't concede an inch, not until he clarifies the nature of this stop. He glances around, noticing the onlookers. Then he moves closer, lowering his voice. "You'd be smart not to make a scene. Redwood cops tend to handle things their way." Her expression remains impassive. "Threatening me won't change the facts," he snorts, almost amused at her composure. "Guess we'll see." Returning his attention to her license, he flicks it once with a finger. "Funny how you folks act innocent. Meanwhile, I'm just doing my job." She raises a brow. "Harassing one driver at midnight is your job?" She can hear a slight tremor in her own voice, but steels herself to keep it subtle. Despite the tension, she refuses to reveal her credentials as a judge. She wants to see exactly how far he'll push when he thinks she's powerless. Across the street, a passing car slows briefly, headlights sweeping the scene like a curious spotlight. O'Neill tenses, perhaps unsure if he's about to be interrupted. Alicia can feel the silent question lingering. Will he back off now that there are witnesses, or will he escalate? He tilts his head toward her trunk. Pop that open. I might need a look inside. She folds her arms. Under what probable cause, officer? His jaw tightens. You'd be amazed how many innocent people hide contraband. Alicia senses the shift, the moment he decides politeness is wasted. He's openly flexing power, counting on her intimidation. But she maintains her stance, never raising her voice, never backing down. A breeze stirs the edge of her dress, a reminder of how surreal this is. One woman and one patrolman, locked in a silent tug-of-war. A flicker of movement at the corner of her eye. A neighbor filming from behind a fence. Alicia notices, but says nothing. Let them record. She's not the one who will be embarrassed by a public video. He sets her license onto the hood, crossing his arms. Don't pretend you don't know what's going on. Women like you, in cars like this, at this hour, we have reasons to be suspicious. She doesn't flinch. Women like me, care to elaborate? He looks at her sideways. Let's just say you're not Redwood's typical night driver. She doesn't bother to correct him. Letting his remark hang, Alicia lifts her gaze just enough to see a few more curious faces peeking from windows across the street. Officer O'Neill, however, stands unwavering, shoulders squared in silent challenge. Then, a distant rumble announces another patrol car arriving. The newcomer pulls up behind O'Neill's cruiser, headlights illuminating both of them in a stark glow. A young officer steps out, her expression uncertain. Alicia notices the name tag, Medina. Medina hesitates before moving closer. Everything all right? She asks. Her tone lacks O'Neill's aggression but holds a flicker of concern. O'Neill tosses a glance over his shoulder. Keep an eye on her, he commands. She's being difficult. Alicia huffs softly. Difficult or just cautious? Medina shoots her an apologetic look. She clearly didn't expect to be dragged into a confrontation over nothing. Still, she stands at O'Neill's side, following protocol, uncertain how far this will go. Alicia can sense the tension rising. O'Neill steps back to his car for a moment, presumably running Alicia's plates on the onboard system. Medina remains behind, gripping her flashlight. Her posture suggests she'd rather defuse this, but she's junior here, and O'Neill's authority weighs on her. Ma'am, Medina says gently, maybe just cooperate so we can wrap this up? Alicia folds her arms, glancing toward O'Neill, rummaging in his cruiser. I have no intention of resisting. I'm only asking for a valid reason. Medina nods, lips pressed. Let's see what he says. It's not a real comfort, but Alicia appreciates the calm. She can almost hear the hum of distant traffic, the hush of Redwood's sparse nightlife. 2 or 3 bystanders remain in partial shadow, cameras poised. O'Neill returns, looking vexed. No active warrants, no prior. He almost seems disappointed. He levels his gaze at Alicia, scanning her dress as though it's a disguise for hidden misdeeds. So you're squeaky clean on paper. She meets his eyes. And that bothers you because... He snorts. Folks with big cars and bigger egos usually have something to hide. Maybe you're just better at covering your tracks. A slight murmur ripples among the watchers. Medina shifts uncomfortably, her flashlight trembling. Alicia wonders if she should finally reveal her full status. She decides, not yet. If O'Neill insists on pushing, let him step even further into his own trap. He jerks his chin toward Alicia. Step away from the vehicle. She complies, moving a few paces off, distancing herself from the car. He nods to Medina. Check inside, see if anything's off. Medina grimaces. She hasn't consented to a search. A brittle silence follows. O'Neill's voice drops, brimming with suppressed anger. I can do this the hard way. Alicia remains poised. Legally, You'd need probable cause. He waves a dismissive hand. You're out here at midnight in a fancy dress, driving a luxury sedan. That alone is not a crime, she cuts in. Unless Redwood changed its laws overnight. Sparks of defiance show in his eyes. I'd watch that mouth. I still decide if this escalates. She catches a flicker of sympathy from Medina, but the young officer doesn't intervene. The small crowd across the street stands transfixed. Someone mumbles, "He's going too far," but doesn't step forward. O'Neill lifts his radio again. Any additional units in the vicinity? Possible resistance. He stares directly at Alicia. I have every right to make sure you aren't harboring anything illegal. Her pulse quickens, though she keeps her face a mask of composure. Whatever you're trying to find, you won't. But go ahead if you think it's worth the embarrassment. He lets out a short laugh. Embarrassment? That's on you, lady. A tense moment unfolds, thick with unspoken threats. Then, tilting his head, he musters a sneer. Let's see if you run when backup arrives, or if you're looking for trouble. Alicia steps forward, unblinking. I'm not the running type. At the sound of another car pulling up, Officer O'Neill glances over his shoulder. Bright headlights wash across the scene before going dark. The new arrival steps out with a firm stride, a broad-shouldered man in a captain's uniform. He quickly surveys the two patrol cars, the bystanders, and the lone woman in an evening dress. Captain Warren Mays fixes O'Neill with a measured stare. Why do we need multiple units for a routine stop? O'Neill snaps to attention, though tension lingers in his rigid posture. Suspect won't comply, he states, nodding toward Alicia. I had reason to question her. Mays turns to Alicia. His tone softens slightly. Ma'am, are you refusing to cooperate? Alicia offers a composed smile. He calls me a suspect. I call it harassment. There's been no real explanation. Before Mays can respond, O'Neill cuts in. She looks suspicious, this time of night in a fancy car, acting like she's above it all. Alicia exhales, almost amused. Above it all, officer. Or simply not falling for intimidation. Mays raises a brow at O'Neill. Any legitimate offense here? Speeding? Expired tags? Anything at all? O'Neill hesitates. Nothing official, but she... Then why the backup? Mays presses. He glances around, noticing the small crowd with phones aimed. He clenches his jaw, turning back to Alicia. She gave me attitude. I had grounds to call in support. A hint of a smile touches Alicia's lips. Grounds. My only crime is coming home late. Mays rubs the bridge of his nose. I'd like to see your ID, ma'am. Let's settle who you are. Alicia opens her clutch, retrieves a polished metal badge that reads Redwood County Superior Court, Judge Alicia Carter. She presents it calmly, her gaze shifting to O'Neill. His expression flickers with confusion. He's silent, unsure how to respond. Mays looks stunned. Judge Carter. He recognizes the name. Officer, you neglected to mention you pulled over a sitting judge? O'Neill stiffens, frustration pinching his features. She never told me. Captain Mays swings back to Alicia. I'm sorry about this. Is there... Alicia interrupts, setting a manila folder on the hood of O'Neill's cruiser. Before you apologize, you might want to see these. She taps the folder lightly. 3 years ago, a disciplinary case. Officer Brad O'Neill faced a complaint for excessive conduct. I presided. O'Neill's face goes pale. Where did you get that? O'Neill's face goes pale. He snatches the folder from the hood, scanning the top page with trembling fingers. Why do you have this? He demands, voice brittle. Alicia meets his gaze steadily. 3 years ago, you were written up for abusing your authority. I presided over your hearing. Her tone remains calm, but there's a faint edge to it. Captain Mays studies the documents in O'Neill's grip. You withheld this information, officer? O'Neill stammers. I didn't realize she was that Carter. A murmur spreads among the neighbors. Cell phone cameras pivot, capturing O'Neill's alarm. One person mutters, "He messed with the wrong woman." Another snickers softly. Mays exhales, turning to Alicia. "Judge Carter, I am truly sorry this escalated." She gives a slight nod. "Apologies won't fix his mindset, Captain. He singled me out. Not because I broke any law, but because he believed he could do whatever he wanted." O'Neill tries to salvage control. "She never said she was a judge. For all I knew, she could be." Alicia cuts in. "It doesn't matter who I might have been. You felt entitled to harass anyone who didn't fit your narrative." He clenches his jaw. "Don't twist this on me. I was doing my job." Alicia raises a brow. "Your job? Or your bias? Listen to yourself." Mays spots the phones aimed at them. He knows there's no repairing O'Neill's reputation now. Sighing heavily, he faces his officer. "Hand over your weapon, Brad." O'Neill's eyes widen. Mays steals his voice. "You're suspended, effective immediately. We can't have an officer who disregards protocol and treats citizens as suspects without grounds." A stunned hush settles. Then, a ripple of whispered satisfaction drifts through the bystanders. Alicia's gaze doesn't waver. "You assume who I am is irrelevant. The real problem is that you believe you can trample anyone who doesn't look or act the way you expect." O'Neill says nothing, fury and humiliation warring in his stare. Finally, Mays repeats, "Give me your badge now." The officer pulls it from his belt, dropping it into Mays's hand. The small crowd gapes as he lingers momentarily, deciding whether to protest, but no words come. Alicia stands firm, dress catching a faint breeze. She knows this is only the beginning. O'Neill lowers his gaze, jaw clenched tight. Mays gestures for him to step aside. She never raised her voice. She never bragged about her title. But when the truth came out, justice spoke louder than any threat. If you've ever watched someone get judged unfairly, share this story. And if you believe these truths need to be told, subscribe. Because real power isn't the loudest shout. It's the quiet strength that refuses to vanish. In that quiet stand, a single spark of truth exposed every lie. One person's calm defiance became an echo of hope for those who felt unheard. Let it remind us all, a steady resolve can topple even the highest walls of prejudice.